Humble yourself to the sound of the water. You gotta bend down low and humble yourself to the sound of the water. You gotta know what it knows, and we will lift each other up. Higher and higher, we will lift each other up. Humble yourself to the force of the sun. You gotta bend down low and humble yourself to the force of the sun. You gotta see what he shows, and we will lift each other up. Higher and higher, we will lift each other up. Humble yourself to the light of the moon. You gotta bend down low and humble yourself to the light of the moon. You gotta shine in her glow, and we will lift each other up. Higher and higher, we will lift each other up.
Good morning and welcome to our online Sunday worship service streaming from the Cuff Sanctuary. We live in amazing and challenging times. Thank you for connecting through the technology of Zoom. If you're having problems connecting today, then we'll have a video up of the complete service this afternoon. I am Reverend Laura Shenham, Minister of Cascade Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. This morning, our speakers are Lynn Metzen and Ronnie Craven. Our music includes a Cuff virtual choir and music from Cuff musicians. Grab a cup of coffee or tea or juice, whatever you want to have on hand. If you have a candle, real or an LED, please use it during the chalice lighting of our service. Christina Davitt will read Joys and Sorrows during today's service. If you wish to share, then at any time in the service, you can use the Zoom's chat feature and send your joy or sorrow. We have fixed the technical glitches, so Christina will now be able to see all submissions. And again, you can start submitting those at any time, and especially try to start doing that now. If you're joining us for the first time, we especially welcome you. Our website will be the hub for our congregation. Information is changing so rapidly, and to be efficient in our communication, we want you to use this as our main place for information. It will be updated daily with resources and new ways to connect. There are religious education packets available on the resource page, and these will be updated every Friday. We also have a couple new classes this week with our RE director, Connor Dolan, and myself. I will be teaching Building Your Own Theology on Fridays, and Connor will be holding a discussion about world religions on Tuesdays. So check those out. Offerings can be made at any time during or after today's service. The act of giving, regardless of amount, is a spiritual practice that expresses our thankfulness and generosity. By living these values, we support the ministry of this church, making a difference within our church community and in the world beyond. You can make gifts and pledge payments today if you visit our website and look for the donate button, or you can mail a check in. Now we will hear from Deb Miller about our stewardship campaign.
Good morning. I'm happy to report some solid progress this past week with our stewardship. So here's some updated stats that we pulled from the website on Friday afternoon. I want everybody to note that this I pledged picture has been created. So those of you who have seen my Zoom and my Facebook profile. I have this up, and I will be sending this picture later today to all of the current pledgers if you submitted an email address on the pledge form. And I will continue to send this to anyone who pledges over the next couple of weeks. Go ahead and move to the next slide. That should show our barometer. There we go. So as of Friday evening, we have 28 total households who have pledged to the campaign, and 2 of those are actually new pledgers. We are 29% toward our goal of 95 total pledgers this year. Many pledges have been increased over this year, and some have maintained, and a couple have decreased. Of all of the pledges that we've received to date, we have a total of a 1.2% higher monetary giving compared to the same donors last year. And as far as fiscally or monetarily, we are 33% towards our budget goal for the 2020-21 annual budget. The stewardship committee, Luke Evans, Leroy Farmer, and myself, Deb Miller, recognize that these are challenging times for all of us. And we want to remind everyone that the act of giving, no matter the size, is a gift to this fellowship, and that every pledge counts. The committee has been participating in weekly stewardship salons via Zoom that's been hosted by UUA Stewardship and Development. So far, we have found this resource to be invaluable to us in these unusual times. While we had originally hoped to have our campaign wrapped up this week, today, in fact, was the day that we were going to wrap it up, we have actually found that we are doing pretty good compared to other congregations from across the nation, and we're doing well. So keep those campaign pledges coming in. To keep up our momentum of getting our campaign wrapped up within the next couple of weeks, the Stewardship Committee has set a goal of 67% of the total pledger goal of 95 by this coming Friday afternoon. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start posting this barometer with our goal, align with our goal of 67%. And then I am going to show each day how much closer we're getting to that goal. There will be 2 more scheduled stewardship question and answer calls scheduled this week. They are scheduled this week, actually, so you can find the details on the Social Connections page on our website. And I'm going to leave everyone with this final quote from Nazir Kanga from his book, Living with Consciousness, Everyday Inspirations for Spiritual Growth and Personal Fulfillment. People who give freely from the heart and soul know that universe is full of abundance and sharing, and giving is a part of connecting with other souls on earth. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. We have a different Zoom link for those who want to join together for fellowship after the service. You will have to disconnect from this link and join the other link found on our website to see each other. Once again, welcome this morning to each and every one of you. Let's take a moment to settle into our space and prepare our hearts for worship. Breathe in and out. Let us set aside our worries, our concerns, and join together in a spirit of worship. This morning's call to worship is from Ann Pert. We come together to celebrate who we are, to share insights that give meaning and hope to our lives, to learn from the wisdom of others, that their truths may contribute to our understanding. We gather, we share, we learn, we celebrate our coming together. Come, let us worship together and lift your voice and spirit to sing our opening hymn, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In.
Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyous
Please join me in our chalice lighting words that are printed in your chat. In the light of truth and the warmth of love, we gather to seek and seek to share. For all ages.
Dear kids, a long time ago, when you were little, Mom and I took you to where we wanted to build a house for us to live in. But in order to build there, men had to come and clear the land. I remember there was one tree, however, that the three of you couldn't stop staring at. Adam thought it was crying. Lindsay said it looked nervous. And Sari, who was only 2 years old, couldn't pronounce the word tree and called it Steve. I love you, Steve, she kept saying. And then Adam and Lindsay started saying it. And before too long, Mom and I got the hint and asked the builder to please save Steve. The day we moved in, Steve was there to greet us. He quickly worked his way into your lives as a swing holder, target, third base, hiding place, jump rope turner, and whenever our dryer broke down, he held our underwear with pride. Yes, right there in the center of our yard, this weird-looking tree grew to become the center of our outdoor life. Through all our barbecues, campouts, dance parties, or when Adam and Lindsay started getting crushes on the Simon kids next door, Steve adjusted to our every need. And it wasn't always easy. Standing tall through snowstorms in the winter, or when Uncle Chester napped in the hammock couldn't possibly have been fun. Not to mention the time that the sewer overflowed and Steve sucked up all the smelly water before it drowned Kirby. Then got so sick himself that the tree doctor had to give Steve a haircut that made him look like a giant thumb. Throughout the years, Mom and I tried to show you, in a world filled with strangers, the peace that comes with having things you can count on and a safe place to return to after a hard day or a long trip. Which brings me to the point of this letter. Last week, a storm hit our area. And though we spared Steve's life a long time ago, this time we couldn't save him. Are we sad? Sure we are. But even in the final moments when he could have fallen on our house, Sari's swings, Kirby's house, or Mom's garden, Steve performed his last trick and protected all of us to the very end. And friends like this are hard to find. So when you come home from Grandma's next week, Steve will not be able to greet you as he's done in the past. I'm sorry. But please know that Steve will always be with us, in our hearts, in our thoughts, and in a different tree at the other end of our yard. See you next week. Love, Dad.
Each of us enters into this space with joys, sorrows, triumphs, or challenges. This is a time in our service we set aside with reverence to honor those life events which have an impact on us in a deep and personal way. As members of a loving community, we embrace these joys and sorrow. Let us take a moment to pause and think, about how we can be mindful of our shared ministry. Joys and sorrows are doors we open to each other to create the deeper connection, a connection full of love, hope, and compassion we so greatly need in this time. If you have not already sent us your joy or sorrow, please use the Zoom chat feature to send it in. I will light your candle and place it in the sand where we will gather all joys and all sorrows we share today.
So we light a candle from Diane, a candle of sorrow and support for her granddaughter Brittany, who suffered a miscarriage this morning. She was about 4 months plus pregnant. Shannon Eisert lights a candle with much gratitude to Mary Madsen for the loan of a sewing machine and for Dana Taves for making mask sets. Patty Ostendorf is happy to have a home and kitties to shelter with. John and Roxanne Harrison light a candle. When her father passed away, Roxanne inherited half of the property that her grandparents had owned and lived on for years, and they're looking to get a loan to pay her aunt for the other half. They're approved for the money part, but the underwriters consider it a unique property as it's a manufactured home on a basement with an acre with a view without many comparable properties. We're looking for ways to be able to reasonably and fairly take care of paying her aunt's portion. Thoughts, ideas, and good energy and prayers would be appreciated. Jameson O'Neill has a joy. Thank you to Diane for reaching out to me. It was a joy to see her. It's a joy to see everyone online as well. Peggy Ludwig has a sorrow. One of her dearest friends from college lost her 44-year-old son to a drug overdose a few days ago. Her daughter, who works in the treatment center industry, says there's mostly fentanyl from China on the streets right now, which is a much different and more powerful drug than heroin from Mexico. She also lights a candle in joy. She Zoomed with 12 members of her family yesterday, and it was wonderful seeing their faces, as well as gathering all together, soothed her soul. Kimber's Bond lights a candle for Rich's brother, Ron Tripoletti, who's struggling with Parkinson's disease and finding care down in San Francisco. Kimber's also lights a candle because they are truly grateful together, she and Rich, but they're grieving the cancellation of their wedding pilgrimage trip to Spain, Italy, and the East Coast. To see family and friends, they were scheduled to leave this week for 2 months. Jim Bryant has a joy. As of April 1st, he had 4 years in recovery. Thanks to all. Ronnie Craven sends prayers for her children, who lost an aunt on their dad's side 2 days ago, and she was a delightful and loving person. Louise Rasmussen said she has a candle because her son is feeling fine now. She is so glad he is able to help with his family again. Jane says that Dana took sets of masks to sew when her machine stopped working, so she's joyful for that. Julie has joy for nature. Driving back from the hospital this morning, she spotted a male wild turkey walking side by side with a male ringneck pheasant. So wonderful to see nature working together. Larry says he has a concern for Gloria Kupferman, who's experiencing very uncomfortable problems due to her allergies this month down in Arizona. Rufus Wood says he's grateful for all the medical personnel and first responders who are putting their lives on the line during this epidemic. Dylan would like to light a candle for a friend and his wife who is coming home from hospice care. Julie McAllister has a joy for Diane McKenzie. She says, "Thank you for the goodie basket. Steve and I so much appreciated it. It was so sweet." And Jamie Krish says, for our undocumented community members who are not eligible for any federal assistance, to help them during this time.
I will light one more candle for those joys and sorrows we carry in our hearts, both inside and outside these walls, though not voiced. They are equally important.
Good morning. Today we're talking about how to stay grounded in these uncertain times. And I'd like to tell you about a place that's kept me grounded for almost my entire life. I'd like you to close your eyes and picture it with me now. Notice that you're breathing and how when I suggest that you pay attention to your breath, you almost automatically slow it down and deepen your breath, and some people might even yawn. I grew up in Montana, and one of my most favorite and sacred places is called Wolf Creek Canyon. It's a beautiful, narrow little canyon with these impossibly red and purple shale walls rising up vertically. There's pine trees clinging who knows how into these tiny little rock crags. Up on top it's pine forest, and down at the bottom runs Little Prickly Pear Creek, a lovely little creek, sometimes brushy with willow and red twig and wild rose, other times grassy with mint growing on the cobbles, and sometimes just the red walls going straight up from the side of the stream. When I was a very little boy, my family would go there sometimes after church on a Sunday afternoon to picnic. When I was 9 or 10, my father took me there by myself and taught me how to fly fish. And I learned the places where you could get into the river and wade and cast and not get tangled up behind. When I was a little older, as a teenager, after work, I'd drive my father while he slept out there, and we'd fish in the evening twilight with the shadow of the light playing on the rock walls and the river. Later, after he retired, I'd take him again, and it was nice that we knew the easy places to get in and out of so he could wade still. I took Mary and the girls there so the girls could wade and play in the water, and then my grandchildren, and watch them look for crawdads and snails and pretty rocks in the shallows, and again listen to the water and the birds. Just last year, I went with my brother, and we went there again even though it was miles out of the way and fishing season was closed, just so I could stand there by the rock walls, listen to the sound of the water and the birds, and be at peace in some place that's eternal. Join me now in meditation or prayer.
Our pastoral prayer this morning is from the Ute Indians of North America. Earth, teach me stillness, as the grasses are stilled with light. Earth, teach me suffering, as old stones suffer with memory. Earth, teach me humility, as blossoms are humble with beginning. Earth, teach me caring, as parents who secure their young. Earth, teach me courage, as the tree which stands all alone. Earth, teach me limitation, as the ant which crawls on the ground. Earth, teach me freedom, as the eagle which soars in the sky. Earth, teach me resignation, as the leaves which die in the fall. Earth, teach me regeneration, as the seed which rises in the spring. Earth, teach me to forget myself, as melted snow forgets its life. Earth, teach me to remember kindness, as dry fields weep with rain. Amen.
Spirit of life,
Our wisdom from our sources today are an excerpt from an essay by Molly Irani, co-founder and hospitality director of Chai Pani Restaurant Group in Asheville, North Carolina. There's a tree in my backyard that leans a bit now and looks pretty haggard when its leaves fall in winter. It was struck by lightning last year in the middle of a thunderstorm with a crash unlike anything I had ever heard before. My dog and I looked to each other for reassurance. Was that lightning? Were we hit by a meteor? I had no point of reference for the sound that shook my world. After several firemen checked everything out, they found the fresh wound on the tree. It was raw and new. You could see the path the lightning took through the thick, scraggly old bark. I didn't know if the tree would survive, but after shedding some bark and losing some branches from the impact of the bolt, it was still standing tall. After the storm passed, I called a tree expert out to examine the damage. He looked it over and said, "It's wounded. That fresh, raw wound will change color over time, and eventually it will form a scar that will be there forever. But that just gives it even more character. Its roots are strong, interconnected with all of the roots around it, which help it to stay standing up. See that big gnarly scar on the tree next to it? That one was hit by lightning years ago and was probably kept alive because of the deep roots that are entwined with these other strong trees. This breed is built to survive. They weather storms and lightning strikes. They shed heavy limbs and old bark and lean toward the sun. Their roots are strong and built to hold them up." His words have struck me and it stuck with me, and they come to mind today as my industry weathers a lightning strike unlike anything we've ever experienced. We're all shaken. Our hearts have been broken and our livelihoods ripped out from under us in a flash so sudden and extreme that we haven't had time to even catch our breath, let alone assess the damage. We're still in the thunderstorm, and the hail is falling all around us. Here's what I know to be true. We were built for this. Our roots are strong and deeply entwined in our communities. We have a network of resilient, hardworking teams who know about adapting to change and weathering storms. We show up for work in blizzards and floods to feed our communities, and we get the job done with grit and tenacity. We sometimes look pretty scraggly when our leaves drop in winter, but through it all, we stand tall and provide shelter and do our job. We have been there in good times and bad, feeding and nourishing our cities, honoring their celebrations, and showing up for their challenges and charities. We're interconnected in ways we cannot even see. Beneath the surface, entwined deep in the bedrock of each of our towns, pulsing in its very heartbeat. In the midst of the hailstorm, I see the strength of my people shine through their fear. We were built to weather storms. We have a raw wound that cut through our thick, scraggly bark. So we are relying on our communities all around the world now to help us stay standing. We need them to see just how entwined our roots are and that we cannot survive without each other.
By the age of 2.5, I had moved 3 times. The last time into the house I lived in until I was a young adult, the same house my parents continued to live in for a total of 56 years. This house had so many memories that have soaked into my being. Many of them inside, learning to cook with my mom, listening to her sweet voice as she sang along with the radio or her old records, putting on roller skates and skating in the basement with my sister, playing with dolls, building elaborate cities, roads, and castles out of my mother's button collection. There was even a king and queen button. And of course, reading anything I could. But the most visceral memories are from outside, hanging up clothes on the line with my mom. I can still feel her with me when I do this now. Stomping down weeds in the pasture to make rooms that my sister and I, our imaginary house. And we did the same thing in the snow in the winter. We would catch grasshoppers and put them in a jar, feeding them all day long and then letting them go at the end of the day. We'd roam the neighborhood until we heard my dad's very loud whistle and knew it was time to come home. We had very active imaginations and played outside most of the time. This being a time before TV was common in every home. Our public library was a reliable resource we used to feed those imaginations. A constant figure in my memories is the maple tree in the backyard. It was loosely identified as a vine maple, and it was not very large when we were little, but it featured in so many events in our childhood. It wasn't big enough to climb on when we were small, and anytime we tried, my mother would call to my dad, and I can still hear her voice, "Harry, get those girls down from there." She wasn't much for adventures. We had picnics under the tree, my favorite being sardine sandwiches, and I can give you the recipe later. Dad always got a little can of smoked oysters, both because he was the only one that liked them, and they were very expensive. I remember sharing the can of sardines between my sister, my mom, and I, and now I can eat a whole can by myself. Once, my mom and I had an elaborate tea party under the tree with special sandwiches, little cakes, a pot of tea, and we dressed up. I was an adult, but we had so much fun. Grandchildren played tag and hide and seek under this tree, and it was special to all of us. I don't remember our family planting this tree, but have seen pictures of it when my sister and I were small, and it was little more than a sapling. Over the years, it thrived and became a home for bird feeders, and when I was an adult and started having my own children, my parents put up a baby swing for the grandchildren, and that really added to the fun. And years before that, my dad put up a rope and board swing because my mother loved to swing, and my children have many memories of swinging with her. I found this poem written by a child about trees that somewhat exemplifies my feeling about our tree. Trees. They're there every day, and under them you can play. Their leaves can be green, and trees are never mean. Please let them stay, so just don't fray. Keep them clean, don't let them lean. Let them thrive, and they'll keep you alive. Sean Reno, December 12th, 2012, period 5. I think the reason this tree figures so prominently in my memories is the permanence of it, the steady and unwavering presence. While it grew and changed, it was always a safe haven, a shady place to sit and think, a canopy of leaves, the soothing sound of birdsong, even a place to hide. I recently took a class on protecting trees during construction, and our maple tree was always in my mind as I was learning about terms like critical root zones and the care needed to protect trees from being damaged. Trees need to be protected during these events, and even when not under construction, trees need care and nurturing. As I was learning how trees were connected to each other and the landscape they inhabit, I was reminded of our 7th principle: respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. So many of the strategies needed to protect a tree can also be used to protect our relationships. One is limits of disturbance, which means protecting the critical root zone, which, if encroached upon too drastically, could threaten the health of the tree. Also, by removing too much of the root during construction, it will remove the capacity of the tree to store energy and reduce its anchoring capability. As trees are dependent on each other in the ecosystem, removing or damaging too many trees in a group puts a burden on those left behind. Studies have been conducted that prove trees communicate with each other through their root system and exchange microbes, even warning each other of danger. As I was listening and learning, my mind was swirling with how much of this was relevant to families and other relationships. What are some strategies to caring for our relationships? Our family was the typical nuclear family with our parents putting family above all, but at the same time there seemed to be a lack of understanding of my sisters and my individualities, and even more how children developed confidence and a sense of always being loved. Not enough of our critical root zone was protected. Sadly, we were also a family of secrets and did not communicate well or share stories that might have strengthened our roots. Sharing a history of depression and abuse might have prepared us for our own adulthood, and even my mother's migraines that no one understood at the time. The trauma of my maternal grandmother's shame about being part Native American was passed on to my mother, and these historical traumas are just now being understood by myself and my children. Because of their own insecurities, my parents kept social interaction to a small group and weren't comfortable with reaching out to those they didn't feel safe with. Just as isolating a tree from its forest can damage or weaken the remaining trees, putting more burden on them to maintain that ecosystem they are part of, so can a lack of knowledge, empathy, and compassion damage the child and the family. What if we had talked to each other as my sister and I were growing up? How freeing that would have been. Another thing I learned about trees is how close to the surface their root zones are and how wide that root zone is. By only watering at the trunk, the tree does not get enough moisture, and extensive traffic on that wide root zone can cause irreparable damage. Our parents clothed us, fed us, loved us to the best of their ability, and gave us what they thought was important: structure and chores, toys and hard work. But the watering of our childhood did not go much beyond the roots. We did lots of things together: drives in hills, picnics in the woods, playing board games, working on projects at home, but I'm just not sure they understood the extent of our needs beyond the basics. In families, as well as our extended communities, care needs to be taken to both nourish and protect those tender beings that we are all connected to. We're all a part of the interdependent web of life, and the damage done to one member of our universe affects us all. If we took the principles of good tree stewardship into our daily interactions, our communities and families could be so much stronger. In Matthew we read, 25:40. Truly, I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. In the same way that we water trees out to the edge of the canopy, we need to feed and nourish our families and communities. That means those that are homeless, mentally ill, and others that do not fit into our ideas of acceptable, not just those we feel akin to. Nadine Aslam, a British Pakistani author, said, "Pull a thread here and you will find it's attached to the rest of the world." I recently heard a compliment about our local library and its acceptance of the people who are homeless and disadvantaged who sit in the warm building. It isn't always so in other institutions, yet how many of us, especially in these times, are one disaster away from being in that situation? How would we want to be treated? This and other situations are avenues for us to truly demonstrate our belief in the seventh principle, not just to those like us or close to us, but the different and maybe not always palatable beings around us. My heart does ache for that child I was and for my parents who both lacked loving upbringing themselves and maybe didn't really know how to love unconditionally. A healing did come to me when my mother was dying, and at the end of her life, she seemed to let go of so many of her defenses and became that sweet, loving person that she always was inside. And I felt so healed from that and thought how wonderful if she could have had that for herself all those years. Yolo Akili Robinson, a writer, yoga teacher, and founder of BEAM, Black Emotional Mental Health, states, "Our children did not get their wounds alone. They were created by the actions of our family, our community, and our world." He goes on to say, "We didn't get them from individuals, and we cannot heal them operating as individuals. This healing work is communal. Healing our children means we need to put love in every possible place we can think of." Think about that. What an opportunity we have to use our privilege to be a part of the healing and nurturing of those around us. Despite it all, with everything that went on in our family, I think I will always be grateful for what my parents did give us. A strong work ethic, a sense of making the most of what we had, the freedom to play outside, explore nature, and not the least of all, the maple tree.
Please lift your spirit and voice to sing our closing hymn, Turning of the World.
With every voice, with every song, we will move this world. With every voice, with every song, we will move this world along, and our lives will feel the echo of our turning. Let us sing this song for the loving of the world, that we may love as one. With every voice, with every song, we will move this world along, and our lives will feel the echo of our loving. With every voice, with every song, we will move this world along. With every voice, with every song, we will move this world along, and our lives will feel the echo of our loving. Let us sing this song for the healing of the world, that we may heal as one. With every voice, with every song, we will move this world along, and our lives will feel the echo of our healing. With every voice, with every song, we will move this world along. With every voice, with every song, we will move this world along, and our lives will feel the echo of our healing. Let us sing this song for the dreaming of the world, that we may dream as one. With every voice, with every song, we will move this world along, and our lives will feel the echo of our dreaming. With every voice, with every song, we will move this world along. With every voice, with every song, we will move this world along, and our lives will feel the echo of our dreaming, and our lives will feel the echo of our healing, and our lives will feel the echo of our loving, and our lives will feel the echo of our turning.
Our benediction is from our hymnal this morning. Deep peace of the running wave to you. Deep peace of the flowing air to you. Deep peace of the quiet earth to you. Deep peace of the shining stars to you. Deep peace of the infinite peace to you. Love be with you.
And also with you.
Please join me in the chalice extinguishing words printed on your chat. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Please raise hands in a spirit of connection for our closing song.
Carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again. Carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again.
Next Sunday is Easter, and I invite you to dress in your Sunday best, bring out your bonnets, suits, ties, and fancy yourself up. Let's worship in style, even if we are at home together. If you want to join the fellowship time, then you will have to leave this call and connect through the link on our website for fellowship time. Please only use the link. If you try to use the meeting number, then you will need a password. So you'll have to text me for the password if you absolutely need it. See you soon, and thank you so much for joining our Sunday service.